Have you ever felt like the government is trying to control more of your life? Well, brace yourselves because things are about to get a lot worse. We're talking about the rise of digital public infrastructure. That's DPI to you and me, a technology agenda that's being pushed by unelected global elites, bureaucrats and big corporations with one goal in mind: complete control over every aspect of your life. And no, this isn't a conspiracy theory. This is happening right now, and it's happening fast. I'm Patrick Christie's, and this is GBN Original. So let's get stuck in. Imagine a world where every single transaction, movement and choice you make is tracked, monitored and influenced by both public and private entities. A world where access to basic goods, services and even your mobility could be controlled by a digital ID. So first, let's break down what exactly digital public infrastructure is. According to a recent report from the World Bank, DPI consists of three components: a digital ID, fast payment systems, and data exchanges that link governments, businesses, and citizens. The authors of this report claimed the COVID-19 pandemic underscored the value of DPI, demonstrating that countries with existing DPIs were able to deliver emergency assistance faster and more effectively.
In fact, it was an occasion for us to experiment a digital surveillance. We developed an application called COVID Data during the pandemic. And in fact, it was the first time that we were tracking the spread of the virus in the two main towns of Madagascar, Antananarivo and Tuamasna, in order to stop the spread of the virus. And we succeeded in it. And in fact, as it was the first experience, it was a success. And in fact, we are now implementing a national-wide surveillance.
COVID-19 is where it all began, like so many things. The pandemic was the perfect excuse for governments to roll out their digital surveillance systems. We saw how quickly lockdowns, contact tracing, vaccine distribution, all of those things were managed using digital tools. And now the infrastructure put in place during the pandemic is being used as a blueprint for the future. The World Bank even went so far as to praise India's digital ID system called Aadhaar. The government used AI to track and monitor who was vaccinated and who wasn't. They went through more than 1 billion people to find who wasn't vaccinated and then forced it upon them. It's remarkable, isn't it? For anyone who they couldn't effectively force the vaccine on, they just locked them out of society. They did this with the use of QR-coded vaccine passports. The Supreme Court of India later ruled in May 2022 that no individual could be forced to get vaccinated owing to bodily integrity and personal autonomy under Article 21 of their constitution.
The Supreme Court has also come down heavy on the government for imposing vaccination. In fact, in the latest Supreme Court observation, they have said that no individual can be forced to get vaccinated, and the right to bodily integrity of a person under Article 21 of the Constitution includes the right to refuse to get vaccinated.
Well, that didn't stop them doing it at the time, though, did it? Now, with digital public infrastructure, the government will be able to control everything from what you can buy to where you can go, simply by controlling your digital ID. Imagine that world where your access to everything is determined by a simple string of data, your digital identity. Need to go out and buy some groceries? Your ID has to match certain criteria. Do you want to travel? Your digital record determines whether you're allowed on the plane or the train. Whether it's government agencies or private corporations, they will all be able to access and control this data. And it's all powered by AI and machine learning, which can predict, analyse and even manipulate human behaviour. But it's not just about convenience. This is about power. Control over every single one of us. Now, let's talk about potentially the biggest concern here, okay? Programmable digital currencies. These aren't just your regular credit cards or banknotes. We're talking about central bank digital currencies and stable coins, which are fully traceable and programmable. That means that governments or corporations could decide at any given time what you can and cannot purchase.
You could have, as I argue in my book, a potentially better and some people might see it, or a darker world where the government decides that units of central bank money can be used to purchase some things, but not other things that it deems less desirable, like, say, ammunition or drugs or pornography or something of the sort. And that is very powerful in terms of the use of a CBDC, and I think also extremely dangerous for central banks.
Imagine a scenario where you've exceeded your carbon quota. Well, can't buy petrol or diesel, can't buy meat, can't even make a phone call. All it takes is a little tweak to the system, and suddenly your ability to participate in the economy is taken away. This is the nightmare that DPI could bring, and it's not some far-off future. No, it's already happening in various parts of the world. If you don't follow the rules, your digital ID gets downgraded, and suddenly you can't get a loan or you can't get on a flight. So what happens when these same systems are rolled out globally under the guise of fighting climate change or misinformation? Well, the possibilities are absolutely terrifying. We're talking about a future where your options, your beliefs, and even your personal choices could be used against you. If you say something that the government or corporations don't like on social media, they can simply lock you out of the system. And just bear in mind what we saw over the summer here in Britain, where people who did put some things on social media are currently now serving time behind bars. Years of it. In fact, one chap, unfortunately, took his own life as a result of his prison sentence. Well, can you imagine that on a nationwide scale, where you put something on social media, or you're recorded saying something, or you have certain political views in the run-up to a general or local election that do not match the narrative of a kind of global elite, and they just strip everything away from you. They lock you up. They could take away your ability to buy something, to travel, maybe even to access basic healthcare. And this has a knock-on effect not just to you, but say your children. And this is where it really gets people. If you happen to have young children who are going to school, who rely on you, obviously, for things like money for food and heating and all of this stuff, income, so you can pay the mortgage so they can live somewhere. If a government can just turn the taps off for that, you're going to feel like you have to toe the line, aren't you, for the sake of your kids? And that's how they get you as well. And it gets even worse, though, believe it or not. When you consider the crises that could be used to justify even more control, we've got climate change, for one of them, haven't we? Governments and corporations are already using it as an excuse to push for net zero policies. You could be penalising for emitting too much carbon or using too many resources. What's funny, though, is our global elites don't seem to be penalised for it, do they? They're always on private jets. They're always flying to and from these conferences like Davos or wherever else it is, like even COP29 recently. Their carbon footprint is so much higher than yours or ours. They also get driven around in chauffeur-driven cars, don't they, with a convoy of people around them. How many staff do they have? What kind of houses do they live in? I mean, all of this stuff, their carbon footprints are so much higher than ours. And yet it's us who's going to be crippled here. Your digital ID could be linked to your carbon footprint, and if you exceed that allotted limit, they could stop you from buying anything. This is the kind of power that DPI could give governments and corporations, and it's all in the name of safety and the greater good. Some people watching and listening to this might think, oh, well, that's okay. I'd like all of this. I think this is a good idea. What do you think the chances are of having a benevolent world government? Really? Given the way that we've seen that governments at every single local or national level seem to get things quite badly wrong, don't seem to have any problems trampling over our existing freedoms, what do you think would happen if we had a world government with all this power? Private corporations are also jumping on this DPI bandwagon now. Amazon, Google, other tech giants will have a stake in controlling this infrastructure. They'll have access to the data. They'll use it to manipulate what you buy, where you go, what you do. Your online behaviour will be scrutinised. The reality is this. The DPI agenda is not about making life easier or more efficient. It is about controlling you. It's about creating a system where every part of your life is monitored, tracked and influenced by both private and public companies. If we don't fight back against this, we are looking at a very stark future, a future where we no longer have any real control over our lives. Thank you for watching. This has been Patrick Christie's. Please don't forget to subscribe to the GB News YouTube channel for more.